Only 24 hours have passed. But the world we knew, the world that existed on the morning of October 7th, 2025, is gone forever. For centuries, perhaps millennia, humanity has lived in what we assume to be a default state, a great solitude. We were the sole intelligent inhabitants of our own oasis of peace and familiarity, surrounded by the vast silence of the cosmos. That silence was both a comfort and a burden. It allowed us to grow without interference, but it also instilled in our collective consciousness a deep loneliness. The greatest question, the one that has been a driving force for science and an inspiration for art throughout history, has always echoed, are we alone? We sent our own messages into the void. Radio waves and golden records, like bottles cast into the cosmic ocean, with the fragile hope that one day someone would reply. But the universe remained silent. Until now.
Atlas, the third
on October 8th,
object ever to be detected.
What
is it, really?
We received an answer, and that answer was nothing we had ever prepared for. It did not come in the form of a friendly greeting, nor an elegant mathematical formula. It came in the form of a photograph, a single image transmitted across hundreds of millions of miles of space from the orbit of Mars. And it shattered our peace forever. To understand this global shock, we must rewind to July 1st.
This wondrous, beautiful shot of the comet is a rare opportunity
on that
for us
fateful
to study
day,
matter from another world.
The Atlas telescope system, the silent sentinels of Earth, did exactly what it was built to do. It scanned the night sky, searching for potentially hazardous asteroids. But it found something else entirely. A faint smudge of light, insignificant, moving at an impossible speed. Initial analysis showed it did not obey the familiar laws of gravity of our solar system. Its trajectory was not a graceful elliptical curve, the path of an object forever bound to our sun. It was a near-straight hyperbola, a sharp knife slice through our cosmic map. Its origin was undeniable. It came from another star system. Astronomers named it 3I divided by Atlas, the third interstellar object ever to be detected. But the real question was, what was it? The simplest and most widely accepted explanation was quickly put forward. And for a time, it reassured the scientific community. 3I divided by Atlas was believed to be a giant interstellar comet, a dirty snowball several kilometers in diameter, an ancient relic formed in the dawn of a distant star system and flung out during a chaotic event millions of years ago. Now, after a long journey through the darkness between the stars, it had chanced upon our solar system. As it approached our sun, the heat vaporized the ice on its surface, creating a colossal head and tail of gas and dust that glowed brilliantly. This was a perfect scenario. It explained the object's speed, trajectory, and even its brightness. It turned 3I divided by Atlas into a wondrous natural phenomenon, a rare opportunity for us to study matter from another world, but nothing more. It was a visitor, not a messenger. It was an astronomical event, not an encounter. This explanation was logical, scientific,
watch,
and safe.
Wonder.
But the story doesn't stop there. Because as scientists looked closer, as more precise data was collected, Anomalies began to appear, small details that didn't fit the perfect comet picture. These doubts were most powerfully articulated by Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard University, a thinker unafraid to go against the crowd. He and his colleagues pointed out anomalies that could not be ignored. First, 3I divided by Atlas was surprisingly bright. Comets, after millions of years of being irradiated in space, usually have very dark surfaces, as black as coal. But 3I divided by Atlas reflected sunlight far more efficiently than a typical comet. It almost seemed to glint. Second, its shape appeared to be very flat. Analysis of its changing brightness as it tumbled showed that it was not a random potato-shaped rock. Instead, it resembled a thin disk or a sail, a shape very difficult to form naturally, but very efficient for traveling through space.
I'm reading a sudden spike.
And third, the greatest anomaly of all was its trajectory. It seemed to have been calculated with perfection. It wasn't just passing through the solar system, it was executing a close flyby of Mars at an extremely close range. And it was doing so at the exact time our fleet of spacecraft was there, waiting. The probability of such a coincidence was infinitesimally small. It was like throwing a grain of sand from another galaxy and having it hit a specific dust mote floating around a streetlight on Earth. Was it an incredibly fortunate coincidence? Or was it a prearranged appointment set by some intelligence when these anomalous pieces were put together? A completely different picture emerged. No longer a lifeless block of ice, but a technological artifact. A fragment, a defunct ship, or perhaps an automated probe carrying out its mission.
We bring you a breaking
The
report,
debate divided
truly
the scientific
historic,
world.
marking a new chapter
On
for
one
humanity.
side was the safety of known explanations. On the other, the extraordinary possibility of the unknown. And there was only one way to end that debate. The moment to verify this strange coincidence was no longer theoretical. It was fast approaching. It is this very month, October, that 3I divided by Atlas is making its fateful flyby. In orbit around the red planet, humanity's robotic eyes, probes from nations across the globe, are waiting intently.
Mathematicians, and
The Hubble and James Webb Space Telescopes are also pointing their lenses towards it, trying to collect every photon of light, every precious piece of data.
Since Encounter Day,
The entire world is waiting for an image,
giving way to an unprecedented
an image
global
that will
effort.
answer the biggest question of all. And that image,
With Project Rosetta,
we knew,
gather the world's greatest
would
minds.
belong to one of two realities. Either we would see a chaotic yet majestic natural world, a great victory for science, or we would be faced with the chilling silence of technology, an encounter that would change everything. Humanity's innocence was in its final moments,
Treat it
and we could
as a
only
physical
wait,
blueprint, not a
watch,
language.
and wonder who or what are we about to meet.
This hypothesis changes
Humanity's innocence
everything.
was in its final moments, and we could only
We've got
wait,
a lock-on suit.
watch,
The energy output
and
is
wonder who
stabilizing.
or
Fantastic work,
what
everyone.
are we about to meet. And then, after breathless moments of silence that stretched into an eternity, the answer began its journey. The first lines of code, as fragile as a
The
silk
symbols
thread,
are not a language.
traveled across
are a
hundreds
key.
of millions of kilometers of cold, empty space, to be reverently received by the giant antenna dishes on Earth. On October 8th, Launtenling Arshawu, in the control centers of NASA, ESA, and all across the world, the air was taut with tension. The best scientists were glued to the large screens, waiting for each pixel to be decoded from the faint signal of the Mars probes. The anticipation was a physical presence, a weight in the air. Decades of theory, centuries of speculation, millennia of wondering had all converged on this single moment. Every science fiction story, every philosophical debate, every quiet moment spent staring at the night sky was about to be either validated or rendered obsolete. The great filter of truth was upon us. The entire world was waiting for an image that would answer the biggest question of all. The first image began to appear, line by agonizing line. It was not a great victory for natural science. It did not show the rugged, chaotic yet majestic icy surface that the comet theory had predicted. There were no violent jets of gas and dust erupting from it. No spectacular astronomical sight born of heat and ice. The hope for a simple natural explanation for a universe that was vast but ultimately understandable evaporated with each newly rendered pixel. The image that slowly built itself on the screens in those silent rooms was not a postcard from nature.
The message was deciphered.
Instead, on the screen was perfect silence. It was the chilling silence of technology. As the higher resolution images were processed, the stunned silence in the control rooms around the globe deepened into a profound, world-altering awe. The object was revealed to be a deep black, a shade that didn't reflect light like any natural material humanity had ever known. Infrared sensors showed it was as cold as deep space, utterly devoid of any geological activity,
does not mean helplessness.
with no signs of life. But it was irrefutably, undeniably, not a rock. The images showed sharp, angular lines, panels joined with a seemingly impossible technology,
The goal shifts from
so
exploration
seamless
to the
that not a
militarization
single
of the
weld could be
cosmos.
found. And most frighteningly, on that black surface, there were symbols. They were complex geometric grooves, belonging to no human language or culture, etched deep into its hull, preserved after what must have been millions of years of travel through the void.
This is not what we agreed
There was no
upon.
longer any doubt.
We had no choice.
This was an artifact.
The warning is absolute.
In that moment, human history turned a new page. The announcement was made,
You cannot
and a
fight
wave of
an
shock and
unknown
wonder
enemy.
washed over the planet. For a generation, our collective culture had been saturated with tales of first contact. But the reality was nothing like the fiction. There were no grand ships descending from the sky, no wise aliens offering enlightenment. There was only this silent, ancient, and utterly indifferent object that had passed us by. The confirmation that we are not alone did not bring the expected sense of cosmic community or relief.
What
Instead,
was that?
it immediately opened up 1,000 greater, more difficult questions. The initial dizzying excitement quickly gave way to a global wave of anxiety. The question was no longer, is anyone out there? It had morphed into a series of far more pressing and fearful ones. Who are they? Where did the civilization that created this ship come from? When did they
Hours after
send
the
it?
whisper
Thousands of
falls
years
silent,
ago, or
The
millions?
Aegis early warning network detects
it still
an
active?
unanticipated signal.
Or is it just an ancient relic adrift in the cosmos? And, above all else, the question that began to obsess every mind on the planet: what do those symbols mean? This was the greatest psychological turning point.
The whisper.
Humanity had shifted from the role of a lonely child in the universe to that of an inhabitant who has just discovered they are living in a house that has long had other silent and mysterious owners. The mystery of 3I divided by Atlas did not end with that picture. It had only just truly begun. The human response to this existential shock was as remarkable as the discovery itself. The journey of discovery now passed from astronomers to a new global team of linguists, mathematicians, and philosophers. Just weeks after Encounter Day, an unprecedented global effort was born, Project Rosetta.
It is a perfect detection tool.
For the first time in history, nations set aside their differences, putting aside conflicts and competition. They gathered the greatest minds on the planet not to build weapons or vie for power, but to become students. The project had a single, monumental objective: to decipher the symbols on the hull of 3I divided by Atlas. It was a unified quest for knowledge, driven by a combination of profound curiosity and a deep, unspoken fear. We didn't know if this message was a gift or a warning,
Won't save us.
but we
Only
knew we had to
action
read it.
will.
Humanity's greatest
have to
adventure
try
was
this.
no
It's our
longer
only
to
chance.
explore the stars, but to find a way to read a message from them. The task, however, was near impossible. These symbols were unlike anything humanity had ever known. Under electron microscopes, they revealed a shocking truth. They were not static writing. They appeared to have a complex substructure, almost a type of bioelectronic circuitry that changed subtly when exposed to different forms of energy. They were a form of active, programmable matter. All attempts at traditional linguistic decryption failed completely.
A gamble that the reflected signal
stalemate
would point
lasted
to a
for
lone
months.
vessel in empty space,
A period
far
of
from
intense
Earth.
frustration and growing dread, until a young physicist at CERN proposed a bold hypothesis that would change everything. What if we stop trying to read it as a language and start treating it as a physical blueprint? Her hypothesis was the breakthrough they needed. The Rosetta team began projecting the fundamental constants of the universe at the symbols, represented by precise energy frequencies. The speed of light, Planck's constant, the charge of an electron, and for the first time, the symbols reacted. They resonated with the fundamental laws of physics, and in response, they emitted a massive stream of data, a complex binary sequence that poured into the team's computers. A quantum supercomputer in Tokyo spent days analyzing this sequence, and then it found a pattern. The symbols were not a language. They were a
The
key.
Icarus probe is in position.
A key
Its
to
energy core
decrypting
fully
a colossal data package that had been hidden deep within the ship, shielded for millions of years. And when that data package was finally opened, its contents were revealed to a silent, waiting world. It did not contain a greeting. It opened a map, a three-dimensional map of a corner of our galaxy, rendered in breathtaking detail. And on that map, 2 points were marked with a special energy signature. One point was our solar system, and next to it, an annotation written in the pure language of chemistry and physics, nascent life. The other point, about 400 light-years away, was also marked. The annotation there read, "Homeworld. Extinguished." And accompanying the tragic map was a single, short message, repeated over and over in the universal language of mathematics. It was not a friendly hello. It was a warning. That message, once translated, contained only 3 words: be quiet. They are listening. The world once again fell into silence. But this time it was not the silence of joyful discovery, but the silence of a primal fear. The 3i divided by Atlas ship was not a messenger of encounter. It was a flying tombstone, a final message from a destroyed civilization, sent to other young civilizations in the galaxy with a single warning. The question, who are they, hung in the air with a new sense of dread. This dark forest of the cosmos, it turned out, was far darker and more dangerous than we had ever imagined. Humanity's great adventure was no longer about finding friends among the stars. It had become a struggle to learn how to hide. And humanity learned very quickly. Just days after the message was deciphered, a global consensus born of fear was formed. The Great Silence began. It was a swift and total shutdown of Earth's cosmic voice. All radio telescopes on Earth, the giant ears we once used to listen to the cosmos, fell silent in unison. They were turned away from deep space. Their receivers powered down. All programs broadcasting into the void. From the hopeful SETI messages that had once defined our optimism to the most powerful military radars that swept the skies, were terminated. Earth voluntarily deafened and gagged itself, pulling on the invisible cloak of silence, hoping that in the vast, dark forest of the universe, the predators would not notice an unusually quiet corner. It was a species-wide act of self-preservation, a retreat into the shadows of our own solar system. But silence did not mean helplessness. While the public was reassured with stories of continued scientific cooperation and peaceful discovery, the most secret and intense arms race in history had begun. Enormous budgets from every nation, funds once allocated for healthcare, infrastructure, and social programs, were covertly diverted into a single global defense initiative, Project Aegis. The goal was no longer to explore the cosmos, but to militarize it. The focus of human ingenuity shifted from discovery to defense. In orbit around the Earth and the Moon, there were no longer new telescopes being built, but high-energy laser systems, electromagnetic railgun platforms, and a dense network of early warning satellites, all aimed outwards into the deep void. Humanity did not know who it was preparing to confront. But one thing was certain: we would not go quietly. However, even as humanity armed itself, a deep schism emerged within Project Aegis itself. The new reality fractured the fragile global unity. The majority faction, known as the Silencers, believed the warning from 3i divided by Atlas was absolute. They argued that any transmission, no matter how small or insignificant,
We found them!
was a potential death sentence
just like
for the
us.
entire species. To them, survival was more important than truth. A long life in ignorance was infinitely better than a glorious death in the light of knowledge. They advocated for a permanent, total silence. In a future of quiet hiding while the orbital weapon stood guard. But a small group of scientists, many of whom had worked on the original Rosetta project, thought differently. They called themselves the listeners. They argued that you cannot fight an enemy you know nothing about. Hiding in the dark, they claimed, was merely delaying the inevitable. What if the enemy found us by accident? What if they had methods of detection beyond radio waves? The listeners believed that the truth, however dangerous, was the only path to survival. Secretly, the listeners executed a daring plan. They couldn't use the radio telescopes, as they were the most closely monitored assets on the planet.
Its energy core fully
Instead, they repurposed a network of neutrino detectors buried deep beneath the Antarctic ice. It was a tool designed to listen for ghostly particles from the cosmos, a form of communication that was completely passive and nearly undetectable. For months, they listened. And then, one day in early 2026, they heard it. It was not a shout. It was a whisper. A weak, directional signal, seemingly emanating from a dark corner of the solar system. Near the Kuiper Belt, the signal was not a threat. It was a question. Encoded in the simplest mathematics, are you there? It was a stunning revelation someone else was hiding. Just like us. Another civilization had also received the warning. But that brief, incredible moment of joy and hope was quickly extinguished by something far more terrifying. A few hours after the whisper fell silent, the early warning network of Project Aegis detected something the listeners had never anticipated. From the direction of 3I divided by Atlas's dead homeworld, a powerful but short signal was broadcast. It was not complex. It was a single ping, like sonar in the deep ocean. A ping that swept across the region of the solar system. The horrifying implication was immediate. They had heard the whisper, and now they were actively searching for its source. The listener's attempt to find an ally may have inadvertently pointed the way for the predator. The struggle to hide had now become a race against time. The silence in the control centers of Project Aegis lasted only a few seconds before being shattered by blaring alarms. Data about the ping flooded the screens. Deeper analysis revealed it was a complex energy wave, designed to scan and reflect off any technological object in its path. It was a perfect detection tool. An astrophysicist at Caltech came to a horrifying conclusion, and the words that appeared on the main screen extinguished all hope. Triangulation wave detected. A time for reflected signal to return to source 72 hours. In 72 hours, the exact location of the solar system and of Earth would be exposed. Rage erupted instantly. The silencers demanded that the traitors from the listeners' faction be found and punished for pushing all of humanity to the brink of annihilation. But in the midst of the chaos, the commander of Project Aegis, an old general who had weathered many crises, slammed his fist on the table and silenced all arguments with a single shout. Blame won't save us. Only action will. The most daring and desperate plan in human history was conceived in a matter of minutes. We could not stop the wave. We could not hide a planet. But we could deceive it. The plan was named Icarus. The objective: create a ghost signal. Use one of humanity's fastest interplanetary probes, an unmanned vessel equipped with an experimental drive, and turn it into a decoy. Icarus's mission was to fly out of the solar system as fast as possible, and at the exact moment the triangulation wave passed over it, Icarus would activate a small but powerful energy core, emitting a single energy pulse with the same signature as the whisper that had been detected. It was a gamble. A gamble that when the reflected signal returned to the predator, it would point to a lone vessel in empty space, billions of miles from Earth. It would make them believe the source of the sound was a nomadic civilization,
It's breathtaking.
not a life-filled planet worthy of attention. The race began. Engineers worked day and night to reprogram Icarus. The ship was launched in silence, with no ceremony. No farewell. It shot into the darkness like an arrow, carrying the fragile hope of an entire species. The 72-hour countdown began. On the screens at Project Aegis, they could see two things. One was the invisible energy wave of the enemy, approaching like a tsunami. The other was the lonely point of light of the Icarus probe, desperately fleeing from it. 60 hours. Icarus passed the orbit of Pluto. 48 hours. Its engines were running past their limits, in danger of melting down at any moment. 24 hours. It was at the edge of the solar system. And then, the moment arrived. The triangulation wave was seconds away from Icarus. The ship was in position. The energy core was fully charged. The entire civilization of humanity bet its existence on a single shout in the darkness, hoping it would be the last one the enemy ever hears.